Frequencies at dusk, confessions by noon. My name is Noah and I sell company to the insomniac. I'm the overnight producer for a talk radio station that pretends midnight is an idea, not an hour. Phone lines, dump buttons, a red ON airlight that knows how to flirt. On paper, I screen callers, stack segments, and keep our host from saying anything the lawyers would have to alphabetize. In practice, I translate appetite. The audience wants danger with guardrails. Sponsors want sincerity with invoices. The city wants to hear itself breathe. I carry a battered clipboard, a marker that writes on the side of coffee cups, and a little pocket recorder I treat like a rosary. It is God, but it remembers. I live with Jules. He's a pastry chef who solves physics with sugar and keeps burned cream on the shelf like a love language. He comes home at dawn smelling of butter and decisions, kisses my temple, and falls asleep like a curtain. We keep a rule on an index card under a magnet shaped like a microphone. Say it by noon. We wrote it after a winter when midnight honesty made us clever and cruel at the same time. The Monday the phone bank behaved and I didn't, the station hummed in the key of confession. A storm sulked over the skyline. Traffic maps looked like regret. Our host, Marta, wanted a politician at 1, a psychic at 2, and a citizen at 3 who could cry without swearing. At 11:56, my phone flickered with the joint email Jules and I use for deliveries and other emergencies. Thank you for your stay, the Bryson. Time, 12:083:02. Points, 200 added. Noon stood up in my chest and asked to see a manager. I didn't call him. Our second rule covers everything not yet a disaster, 2 loops around the block before nomming it. My loop is the alley behind the station where the dumpster smells like confessions reheated and pigeons walk like witnesses. I walked it twice. The transmitter tower blinked its old Morse. You already know. A caller left a voicemail asking whether love is a conspiracy. The storm answered on a separate line. He introduced himself with the practiced innocence of a man who knows microphones don't lie for long. Dorian Vale, he said, and a hand appeared across my desk, expensive and sure. He was advising the mayor's office on narrative alignment, which is the kind of sentence that buys its own drinks. We'd booked him for a segment about downtown redevelopment, which is a polite term for rearranging the poor. He sat in the green room like a roomer and watched me triage callers with the patience of a cat. Your questions are better than your show, he said, not unkindly. You ever think about hosting? I like to be the last edit, I said. Editor saves cities, he replied, and smiled in a key that opens doors. He leaned into the mic like he already had audio sweetening his vowels. Marta asked him about public process. He answered about inevitable progress. He looked through the soundproof glass and found my eyes like we were sharing a script. After the segment, he lingered with just enough professional pretense. Drink? He asked, the question padded with clause and courtesy. Jules texted at 11, 400 croissants. I may propose to butter. Dinner will be toast unless you're a hero. I typed back. I am no one's hero tonight, then deleted it and wrote, I'll stop by your side of town at noon. He sent a sticker of a whisk flexing. The Bryson Bar is where news anchors pretend to mingle with weather. Dorian sat with one ankle on his knee and a glass of something that apologized in oak. He asked how it feels to hold the dump button during a confession, and I told him it feels like knowing exactly when to end a prayer. He touched the back of my hand with 2 fingers like he was checking for a live wire. Here, he asked with his eyes. I said now with mine, and we took the elevator like a moral hazard. His room believed in abstract art and lamps heavy enough to regret. He kissed like a man who had rehearsed and finally got the audience he wanted. He was generous where good biographies train men to be, selfish where a mouth keeps its claims. I put my hands where agreements live. We left the lamp on because daylight had been added to the terms 3 doors back. After, he lay on his stomach with his face turned to the window like expensive plants. "You'll forgive him," he said, meaning Jules, meaning the person who makes bread and home out of the same 4 ingredients. "I'll speak by noon," I said. He smiled like I'd tipped correctly. Jules was already home when I got in, hands sugar-scraped and eyes soft with fatigue. We stood under the microphone magnet at 11:59 and leaned into noon together like a landing. I said hotel, elevator, mouth, hands, yes. I didn't say Dorian because names are doorways. He listened with the patience of a man who proofed dough for years before learning he couldn't rush yeast. "Do you love him?" he asked. "I loved the part where all the voices in my head turned off for an hour," I said. He nodded, went to the fridge, and took down our card. "New line," he wrote, the marker squeaking like a small animal. "No rooms we can't name at this table. If something breaks, we break it before midnight where we both can see." He kissed my knuckles like a verdict with appeal rights. Dorian didn't just leave. Men like him never do. He started sending me notes about guests we might book, angles I might pitch. He knew which producers answered emails after 2 and which editors could be made to feel like co-authors. He texted a photo of the transmitter tower before dawn with the caption "proof," as if light were an affidavit. I blocked his number and then unblocked it because the adult thing is a moving target. The gossip vertical that monitors our industry posted a grainy lobby still from the Bryson. My shoulder, his mouth, a caption that used the phrase "message discipline" like a dare. Jules didn't forward it. He printed it, taped it to the inside of a cabinet where we keep spices, and took it down at noon. "Paprika is not a reminder," he said, and smiled like he'd rehearsed the line in case I needed it. Stories like ours love props. The Bryson called to say housekeeping had found a ring in a room linked to my loyalty number, narrow gold, engraved D+N inside like arithmetic that wanted to be law, not mine. The clerk was careful. I asked them to hold for owner. Dorian arrived with a smile that underpaid his mouth, slid the ring onto his finger, and looked at me like a headline that had been bullied into accuracy. "You're precise," he said. "I admire that." "I prefer accurate," I answered, and watched him choose not to hear it. The station tried to save me with work. A caller named Andre from the West Side found a way to make policy sound like poetry. The dump button behaved when a man started confessing his affair and forgot to omit his church. We booked a late-night therapist who spoke softly enough to make rage safer. Dorian sent a list of guests with contact numbers and a line that said, "You deserve better tape," which was both compliment and leash. Jules left a ramekin of lemon curd in the fridge with a note that said, "For your mouth, not your guilt." Then the recorder surfaced, because the universe enjoys symmetry. A junior engineer found a small wireless mic taped under the call screen desk, its light a private dot. It had been collecting the pre-interview moments, the breaths before the story becomes presentable. The IT guy peeled it off with disbelief and nausea. We dropped it in a sandwich bag because custody is homemade here. Legal produced a real evidence envelope half an hour later. Our GM asked for a meeting with capital letters. The maintenance log for that desk showed a ticket opened to fix a sticking slider by a contractor attached to a consulting firm I recognized. Dorian met me in the alley behind the station like a weather forecast. "Not me," he said, hands up, sleeves immaculate. "We audit, but we don't eavesdrop." "You had the contractor," I said, and he gave me that politicians shrug civilians think is choreography, and I think is a warranty on mischief. I told Jules at noon. He made coffee with the patience he saves for laminated dough and asked me the question he uses when making sugar look like glass. "Do you want this or just the story of this?" I set the card on the table like a warrant. I want us, I said. He reached across and touched the inside of my wrist as if measuring a simple syrup. The radio between us stopped pretending it wasn't architecture. Dorian tried a finale he'd rehearsed for a more obedient audience. He invited me to the Bryson to debrief, after he spun a press conference so hard the city thought it had been loved. When I arrived, he was holding the ring like a thesis. "Say my name," he asked. I said no, because adulthood learns to throw away certain drafts. He laughed softly and pocketed the ring. Some men take gestures with them like furniture. The recorder mess resolved boring, which is what mercy looks like in our trade. The contractor was fired at a volume that implied reform. Legal wrote a memo with the words "regrettable" and "training" in the same sentence. Our GM added a line to our internal policy that will never make the news. The station put little signs near the call screen that say consent is not implied. Dorian texted one last time from a number that looked temporary. "You were precise." I muted the thread and wrote nothing back because we're not the story he thinks we are. If you came for erotics, I will not pretend we were saints. There was a hotel wall, a yes, hands where we agreed they belonged, a mouth that believed in the moment more than the man. The lamp was on because daylight had become part of the bargain. It was heat without metaphor, the kind that makes sense out of bodies and ruins out of stories. If you came for intrigue, I can set the table. A ring with neat arithmetic, a recorder with bad manners, an elevator with narrative ambitions, and a radio station that sells voice to people who think they're alone. If you came for closure, you haven't been listening to talk radio. We fade to the ad break. We come back. Jules and I left the lamp on that night. He asked here, with his hand at my throat, not as ownership but as literacy. I said now, with my hands where he could rename them later. We were careful because care is the only worship I believe in. In the morning he made sourdough toast and the smell of it taught the kitchen forgiveness. He added another line to our card in small chef's capitals. "If you burn something, do it where I can see and help find water." We didn't laminate it. Paper should breathe. Work stayed work. I told a caller we don't give legal advice, but we do lend attention. A woman laughed on air like she'd found a spare lung. Marta let me kill a segment about a celebrity because grief called in with better ratings. The on-air light kept its secrets. The tower blinked its old sentence into the night. At noon, I told the truth or failed honestly trying, in a kitchen where sugar cooled and a man cleaned a whisk like it was a wand he could use again. We are not a moral, we are a practice. I still walk the alley twice when news breaks, or I do. The pigeons still bless nothing and make it count. Sponsors still want sincerity that fits a 30-second spot. Our dump button still believes in mercy when callers forget nouns. Dorian will pass me sometimes on a sidewalk that doesn't owe us anything. He will nod like a courtier. I will nod like a man who learned to choose kitchen tables over lobby cameras. For a few hours at a time, the red light goes steady, the lines fill, and my clipboard edits the world into something we can say out loud. At noon, we practice again.